Hi, welcome back to Rich Motion Recap. In today's video, I'm recapping a movie titled Mission to Mars. It is an American science fiction adventure movie from 2000. Before we get started, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up and subscriber. With that being said, let's get started. While trying to settle Mars, astronauts discovered that there have already been people there before. There is Nicholas the bad boy who is attempting to get banged one last time before leaving the party to astronauts, which they will be embarking on the trip to Mars the next day. The only married couple participating in the mission is Woody and Blake. Renee, an international astronaut, and Phil and Luke will travel in two teams. Luke is waiting for another astronaut named Jim to arrive at the party. His wife tells him to go talk to his son Bobby before leaving. Bobby tells Luke that he will miss Luke and asks who will read to him while Luke is gone. Luke tells Bobby that he will be reading the same book in space every night that Bobby will read. In a way, they will read the book together. Jim Woody arrives at the party and everyone is happy to see him. After the party, Jim mentions a woman named Maggie. Luke says that Jim and Maggie have the right to go to Mars more than anybody, and he is vexed that they will not get to Jim, says it's all right, yet when Luke leaves, it's evident that he is disturbed also. 13 months later, Nick, Luke, Renee, Sergey, and their team reached Mars. One of their rovers spotted a strange mountain with a shiny top. They think it's ice, and underneath the mountain could be a whole water reserve. Luke tells the crew to move the radar closer and use more power to get an accurate reading. As they do that, an intense energy pulse comes out of the mountain and all their instruments stop working. Then a tornado starts forming that sucks everything in the tornado, moves like a sentient being. They send the message to the World Space Station, where Woody, Phil, and Jim are present. As Luke and the crew reach the mountain, they hear a strange signal in their headsets. They use a radio wave radar after the tornado passes. It sucks in and kills Sergey, Renee, and Nick, but Luke survives. Back on the World Space Station, an emergency meeting is called because an intense energy pulse from Mars has been detected. After that, nearly all transmissions have been lost. However, a video transmission is received that barely works, but it shows Luke, who is severely injured, telling everyone on his team that something attacked them. Woody attempts to persuade the skipper of the World Space Station to send a salvage mission for Luke, yet the chief says that Luke could currently be dead, and they have absolutely not a chance of knowing whether going to Mars is protected on the grounds that every one of the transmissions have. Halted, Phil says they can get data sent from one of the Saturn tests flying near Mars and plan their central goal in like manner, and the commander concurs. Woody lets the skipper know that the mission will possibly work in the event that Jim flies the boat, since he has invested the most energy. Preparing to go to Mars, and him and Maggie were the ones who planned every one of the Mars mission plans. Skipper is hesitant from the get-go, however at last concurs a while later. The group of Jim, Woody, Terry, and Phil is approaching Mars. Phil is making DNA out of confections, and Jim shows up and eats his treats. Woody lets Jim know that the Saturn test will be flying near Mars in a couple of hours, giving them the data they need to land. The Saturn test shows pictures of 3 graves close to the headquarters of the past group. Phil thinks this implies that Luke is alive. However, Terry says it simply implies there was nobody left to cover him. They take a gander at the site where the energy beat came from, and it is as yet radiating similar heartbeat. They believe it's an issue with the test, as they are planning to enter Mars. Miniature meteoroids begin hitting their boat and make openings where the air begins spilling from. Woody seals up the openings from within and the outside with the assistance of the group. However, they don't know that the meteoroids have likewise harmed their gas tanks as they start their send-off into Mars. Climate fuel spills out, and when they discharge the motor, there is a blast obliterating their boat. They must choose the option to get out into space. In only their suits fastened to one another, they go for the gold module and circle around Mars. From the past missions, it's farther away from them than they determine. So Woody concludes that he will take a catching weapon wire, utilize all the fuel in his fly pack, and fly max throttle at the refueling module, binds the wire to it. This will give the remainder of the posse an opportunity to arrive at the module. Securely, he endeavors the move and figures out how to tie the wire, yet overshoots himself and is left abandoned in space with no fuel in his jetpack. Terry is crushed and says they need to save Woody, yet Jim and Woody Both know it's unthinkable in light of the fact that not a single one of them have sufficient fuel in their fly packs, Terry and Beaver. The salvage, at any rate yet, Woody advises her to go back and forth back before she runs out of fuel and is abandoned as well. She endeavors to bring Woody back utilizing the hooking firearm, yet the wire is somewhat excessively short to contact him. Terry says she will draw nearer and attempt, and once more Woody acknowledges she will commit suicide attempting to protect him, so he eliminates his cap and forfeits himself. So she stops Jim, Terry, and Phil figured out how to land the refueling module on Mars. They arrive at the headquarters of the past mission they see, as the vast majority of the gear harmed yet repairable, which implies they can return home with it. Jim observes that plants are filling in the exploratory nursery and is stunned by this. Luke shows up behind Jim and assaults him. Luke is not doing so well and thinks Jim is a mental trip yet. Jim persuades him this is reality by letting him know that he is perusing a book that his child Bobby is likewise perusing back on the planet. Luke quiets down. He lets them know how he made do by developing plants in the nursery. For a year he enlightens them regarding the occurrence that killed the remainder of the group. As opposed to saying he endured, he says he was saved, and it was for an explanation. He says he was saved to sort out the mysterious. Jim asks Luke what secret he is referring to, and Luke shows them an image of the monster metal face. Turns out it is the renowned face on Mars, which was recently seen from satellites yet was expected to simply be a mountain. Luke says that it was put there by somebody so that them could see. Jim gets some information about the transmission Luke's group heard when they were near the face. Luke makes sense of that. He has been examining the transmission for a year, and he sorted out that the example of the transmission in actual aspects made the image of a DNA. He says a self-representation from the creatures put the face there, a statement of their personality, a mark. Terry sees that the last sets of chromosomes is absent from the DNA, so it's not human. Later, as they are pressing for the excursion home, Jim spills a few confections, which causes him to recall his discussion with Phil. He understands the DNA picture isn't a mark, it's a test the creatures maintain, that they should fill in the last sets of chromosomes to demonstrate that they are human. The face went after Luke's group in light of the fact that the radio waves from their radar were deciphered as some unacceptable response to the test. Jim says they need to reconfigure the radio waves from the radar to offer the right response, filling the last two chromosomes. The remainder of the group are reluctant. Yet Jim persuades them that on the off chance that they don't do this, the entire mission would have been for no good reason, and each and every individual who kicked the bucket would have been to no end to be protected. They send the radar to the face through a meander. They communicate the radio wave bearing the right solution to the DNA conundrum. A white entryway opens up in the face. Jim, Terry, and Luke choose to go to the face, and they advise Phil to fix the return excursion module and leave when he's done, regardless of whether they are back. Jim, Terry, and Luke enter through the entryway of the face, and it contains behind them breaking radio contact with Phil. They understand the environment inside is breathable air, and they remove their protective cap. They go into a 3D model of the nearby planet group. The nearby planet group shows Mars as a blue and green planet. It's recounting a story individuals used to live on Mars. However, a meteor hit the planet, obliterating it. A slim red being shows up from behind Luke, Terry, and Jim, and keeps on showing them the story. The number of inhabitants in Mars passed on in spaceships to go live in various universes, yet one of the boats was abandoned, and data was transferred into it by the Martians. It was this boat that came to Earth and carried the primary single-cell organic entities with it. Those organic entities ultimately developed north of millions of years into current people. Life on Earth really came from Mars. The face on Mars was set there so one day individuals from Earth can return and gain where they came from. Radio contact with Phil is restored, and he lets them know a situation is unfolding, and they need to get back to the module so they can return home. Jim understands that the face is truly a boat, and a commencement has started for its departure. Terry and Luke start to leave yet Jim says he will remain here. He says that this was all a greeting for them to go meet their Martian precursors, and he will be going. It's what he was destined to do. Terry and Luke consent to let Jim go. Terry and Luke get out and scarcely come to the return excursion module in time as Phil is going to leave. In the meantime, Jim is lifted into a little boat where he is put in a compartment. Water starts to ascend in the compartment, and Jim gets stressed. He pauses his breathing. Yet, as the water rises as far as possible up, he understands he can some way or another take in it. He has flashbacks of his whole existence with his companions and his significant other Maggie, as he is energized for the excursion to another world. As Terry, Phil, and Luke are leaving the Mars Air in the return excursion module, they saw Jim's boat fly by. Taking him to another system, Luke takes a gander at the boat departing into profound space and wishes Jim best of luck, realizing that his companion is at long last doing what he was bound to do. The end.